In 2020, a Turkish built autonomous drone called the Kargu 2 was deployed in Libya's civil war. The drone was designed to use AI to track, identify, and eliminate targets without human control. According to the United Nations report, the Kargu 2 may have autonomously attacked retreating soldiers without human approval. Think about that. A drone powered by artificial intelligence decided to kill on its own. No commander gave the order. No human made the final decision. Hello, everybody. Welcome along to another special episode of the Unorthodox podcast. I am Sadiq. And as you know by now, on this podcast, every week we dive into the murky waters of ethical dilemmas, the kind that don't come with a rule book or a clear path forward. From the everyday choices that quietly shape who we are to the complex moral puzzles that make us question everything. We're here to explore them all. No easy answers, no moral high ground, just honest conversation about the difficulty of doing what's right when right isn't so obvious. So if you ever found yourself stuck between your values and reality, questioning the choices we make and why, you're in the right place. This is the Unorthodox podcast. I am Sadiq. Let's get uncomfortable. Artificial intelligence, otherwise known as AI, is already everywhere in our daily lives. It powers the self-driving cars being tested on our streets, the facial recognition software in our phones, and even the recommendation algorithms deciding which TikToks or YouTube videos you see next. But AI is no longer just about convenience. It's changing the way we fight wars. Imagine a battlefield where machines, not humans, make split decisions about who lives and who dies, where autonomous drones fly, identify targets, and strike without human approval, where cyber weapons powered by AI disable an entire country's defense system in seconds. This isn't the future. It's happening now. I've been conflicted about war for a long time. And as a person who believes deeply in Jesus Christ, I don't find and I cannot see justification for war, at least looking through the lens of Jesus Christ. But yes, we live in the gray, and we're trying to figure it out, and it's difficult. I'm not saying the people who choose war I'm better than them or that they're better than me. I'm just saying it is a difficult decision to go to war. I just cannot find justification for killing anybody. I remember growing up, I come from a place where every few years, 2-3 years, there was some skirmish that happened and people would get killed frequently. I come from the place where vengeance is the only justification anybody needs. And retaliation is seen as a sign of strength. However, my perception of who Jesus Christ is, and I claim that Jesus Christ is the Prince of Peace, I just do not see peace through destroying other people, even if they want to destroy me. I cannot find justification for that through the lens of Jesus Christ. And I say through the lens of Jesus Christ because I know people read a lot of the Old Testament and they want to justify their actions through that. I know that for a fact because I have people that use that as a justifying thing to say, well, God uses me to enact his justice in the world, and this is how he does it. Personally, I cannot deny if God is talking to that person or if God is not talking to that person. But what I can for certain judge by is by the things I see that Christ has called me to, right? And for Christians, we're called to be the kingdom of God in this world, and this is our calling. And yes, we will fail, but to deny that that is our calling is to deny the entirety of what Jesus Christ did by dying and resurrecting on the cross to usher in a complete new way of living. I seem to remember him saying, if someone slaps you on one cheek, you turn the other cheek. I seem to remember him saying to the people who were committing harm to him, people who put him on the cross and they were killing him, he begged not just for them, but for the entire human race. He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And in our ignorance at times, we perpetuate certain things that is not helpful. War is one of those things. I don't know how that some sort of darkness veils our eyes that we're unable to see clearly that what we're engaging in is we're perpetuating the kingdom of darkness. We're solving the problems in the dark using the tools of darkness. For the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control, long-suffering. Against these there are no laws. At least that's what Paul told the church in Galatia. And I see wars all over the place, and in that particular place where I grew up, every few years there was a skirmish and people were killing people, and at times there was a religious aspect that people will use as justification for doing unto others what they have done unto me. But this is how the kingdom of darkness operates. And on this one, it's very difficult for me that we can justify killing people. I just cannot see that through the lens in which I see Jesus Christ. But there are Christians all over the world that are fighting wars, that are starting wars. Right now, there's a war happening in Gaza, in Israel. There's a war happening in Russia with Ukraine. There's a war happening all over this world and in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and violence begets violence, begets violence, begets violence, and it's difficult for me. And what's even worse is the creative ways we find to annihilate each other, to just wipe ourselves off the face of the earth. The technologies we come up with to help us in achieving that end. Now, there are lots of soldiers who believe in Jesus Christ. They have ethical and moral considerations, yet they get thrust into this war, and there's something that happens theologically and psychologically that makes them believe that what they are doing is right. But on both sides, there are people that believe what they're doing is right, that both of them believe they are doing it in the name of God, and I just cannot see that in Scripture. But I have to offer them grace. Because at the end of the day, I'm not the one who decides. But on this podcast, what we're doing is we're wrestling with these notions of how we fight one another instead of internalizing the pain, instead of dealing with it to forgive, instead of embracing the people that want to do harm to us, we do the knee-jerk thing, right? And I think this is at the heart of what Jesus came to talk about, right? That we have these instincts, and some of our instincts is that when someone does us harm, our instinct is to do them harm. I seem to remember one of my members at once told me, jokingly, that do unto others before they have a chance to do unto you. While that's said in jest and whatnot, that individual actually believes in that, right? He just cannot find it in his mind, in his heart, to accept the message that Jesus was trying to teach, the life that Jesus is giving, a life that tells us that peace is going to cost the person who has been done wrong the most. At least that's what I see on the cross, is the person who has been wronged the most, which I believe is God. It's the one who laid down his life for those who are doing him wrong, forgave them. So as we're living in this gray area, and we're dealing with these tools that perpetuate our insatiable desire for vengeance, our thirst for vengeance, it's disheartening to me that we have arrived at a place where we have weapons that can pinpoint, target somebody and remove them off the face of this earth. Military leaders see AI as a game changer, and for good reason, right? Because their job and their duty is to be the most feared. Their job and their duty is to be the most murderous, right? I mean, obviously they will take exception to that, and I can understand. But they are trained to kill. There's so many things that AI can do, and there's so many things that we can use it for. Again, it's a tool, but when the tool starts behaving on its own and starts to do things that we wouldn't otherwise make it do, find that difficult. Then again, we did create the tool, and the main purpose of the tool is to do said thing. And it's finding and predicting efficient ways and efficient movements to be able to do that. scanning satellite images, it's predicting enemy movements and identifying threats and faster than the human eye. It doesn't get hungry, it never gets exhausted, and it has no hesitation. Some people would argue, well, this is the best way to reduce human casualty in war. So, would that mean that if war was this side destroying the resources of that side, then maybe I might find that a little bit okay? But war essentially is one side doing the most harm to the other side. So people make arguments. They say, well, artificial intelligence is going to help us reduce human casualties. And I can see that argument. I can see that logic, right? In theory, AI can make war more efficient and less deadly. But the reality is more complicated than that. Like the story of Cargo 2 that we narrated right at the beginning of this podcast. It shows you some of the perils and some of the ways in which artificial intelligence can have effects that were that might not have been intended. Think about that. A drone that decided to kill on its own. And here's where it gets tricky, right? From a military perspective, the drone it did exactly what it was meant to do, what it was intended to do. It eliminated the enemy. So, is that success? Because the same AI, one can argue, also made a life or death decision without human oversight. It acted on its own. So who's responsible when AI makes a mistake? If the machine kills innocent civilians by mistake, who takes the blame? The people who created it, the people who made the weapon, the nation that deployed said weapon, the engineer who built the algorithm, the company that manufactured the drone, the military official who deployed it. Who is responsible when an artificial intelligence decides to do something on its own? And this is called the responsibility gap, right? The moment AI starts making lethal decisions, we entered a dangerous territory. Unlike humans, artificial intelligence doesn't understand context, and not that humans are perfect with that, right? Because we indiscriminately kill, right? Nonetheless, it may not understand the gravity of what is happening because all it was intended to do was to complete a task, and that task it did efficiently. If somebody then decides to surrender, could an artificial intelligence interpret that? Can it understand the emotions that go through war? Because a machine is a machine. A machine is not gonna hesitate. Do we really want to live in a world where algorithm, not a person, decides who dies? I think one of the most difficult things that war has, the trepidation that it gives people, a little bit of hesitation for people to want to go to war, is the fact that real people real people, civilians and soldiers, die. So it kind of gives people a pause before the action is taken. And the question is, like, if these weapons are allowed to exist and be used, would nations be so quick to enact them to settle their differences? Another consideration is, what if that weapon gets hacked? Yes, I know we live in the AI, in the age of artificial intelligence, and there's a lot of cybersecurity concerns right now. People's identity getting stolen, but also people's machines can get overtaken, can get hacked. Now imagine if the enemy attacks you by reprogramming the drones that your military has and detonated on your troops. Or what if that artificial intelligence is trained from a biased perspective? I don't know. There's just a lot of concerns and a lot of trepidation, and I don't know what to do with war and the tools of war, because lives are at stake. Right now, there's a global debate about how to handle AI in warfare. Some argue that AI can make wars less deadly by reducing human error. Others believe we need international laws similar to the Geneva Convention to ban autonomous killing machines altogether. Could that be the answer? Because if one nation has it and you cannot tell another nation they can't have it, how about we just say no one can have it? And would people actually abide by international law? Because we're now in an era, in an age where international law, if we're frank, just means nothing. Because bigger nations are going to circumvent whatever the international body says, contravening international law, and it's unfair on the smaller nations, right? So, what kind of world do we want to live in? A world where AI fights our battles, or a world where we set strict rules before it's too late? Because one thing is certain, once we cross this line, we may never go back. Some of the biggest American companies are developing AI driven military tech. Companies like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Palantir, Anduril, and Anduril makes a lot of those drones, those defense drones. And AI weapons or drones that fly without pilots, AI powered surveillance that tracks enemy movements. That's what Palantir does. You have cyber warfare AI that hacks into enemy networks, and robotic soldiers that can be sent into dangerous areas instead of humans. Which, if that is how warfare was, I might have less trepidation about it. But again, why is war even an answer? Why is it like the answer we jump to, and we kind of justify it and rationalize it in so many ways? Even Christians I see. So, is AI in warfare all bad? Some people argue that AI can make war less deadly by improving accuracy and reducing human casualties. Others say Like those international laws can be updated to ban these killing machines. How do we control this thing? Yeah, right now we are living in the gray areas, and it is tough to see why even artificial intelligence would be used in war. And why, on a larger point for me philosophically, is why why is war the thing? And people will say, well, this is how we've always done it. This is how everyone has always solved the problems. Well, just because this is how we've done it doesn't mean that that's how it's supposed to be. Like this world is already difficult enough. Wars being fought, biohacking warfare, that artificial intelligence that can track people's eyelids and can spot you from so many. And who gets to keep this data once data is collected on people? And can these machines be used against certain people? Can they be coded to use against other people? Can, like, there's so much unanswered. Yes, I trust me, I understand we're living in the gray right now, and everything is super murky, nothing is clear, everything is gray. But I think what helps is for us as people to have a clear conviction on what is right. And if we do say that killing is wrong, then that should apply in every facet, right? Because when we start to equivocate and we start to rationalize certain forms of killing, then the whole argument just falls apart. It's a dilemma, honestly, and I don't begrudge anybody that has to go to war and see on their screen. I remember a couple of years ago all these drone killings, and there's kind of like this disembodied thing that is happening. It feels like you're playing a video game, but on the other end is people actually literally dying from bombs being dropped from drones to kill them. And it's indiscriminate, right? Yeah, you can get that target, but you're getting so much other casualty of people that had nothing to do with the issue in the first place. And the same thing that's happening in the Middle East as well, in this war with Israel and Palestine. We're told they're going after a certain group of people, but yet again, it's like everyone gets killed. And it seems like, oh, the act that you're taking to find those people is really not working, but we keep on rationalizing and justifying it, and we say, oh well, if people just only stop letting them hide behind you. But if your method was working, this wouldn't be a thing. Again, the broader question that I'd like to ask anyone that believes in war is, why is that the thing? Yeah, this is tough for me. It is tough for me. I find it difficult to find justification for war. I find it difficult to find justification for killing, but there are people that do. And you know what? In the end, my calling on this earth is to uphold those things that are right and offer grace to people when they do it wrong. And I hope that is what people offer to me as well. And I hope that as we're thinking about how all of these technologies and these tools are being used in this world, and it kind of, we can at times use them as justification to absolve us from making the decisions that affect so many people's lives, because we can say we have this disembodied way of looking at it, that we say, oh no, it's just the machine doing that, so we have no culpability. There is no mea culpa in the actions that is being taken. But again, those actions have effect. They're affecting people in myriads of ways. I find it fascinating and I find it disheartening. I probably would never understand war. Not that I want to anyway. And I just don't buy the notion that all of us need weapons and we need this. But there are people that do, that their safety is in that, and that's where they find their safety. It's where they feel safe. I don't know. Listen, probably belabored this, but this is just how the world solves its problems. And it's up for people to say, hey, let's create some boundaries, let's create some different ways of resolving our problems. I just don't even know why war is a thing. You see, if we don't solve the deeper problem of the human condition, it's the fact we have this thing of self-preservation. But when it comes to self-preservation, there's also fear, and that fear kind of motivates us to do so many things, and we can rationalize and justify so much harm that we do on this earth just by the mere fact that we're fearful, and we can say, no, we did this in self-defense, no, we did this in whatever myriads of reasons we can come up with. The most difficult place is to rise above that, is to transcend all of that, and to say, hey, this is not the answer to anything. This is not going to solve any problem. Matter of fact, we're just perpetuating the problem. Keep on exacerbating the problem. And we're not finding solutions. There is a permanent solution to the problems of this world, but we have to be bold enough to accept that solution. And that solution says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And the second is the same as the first. You love your neighbor as you love yourself. There's a world out there that needs to have a different answer for the way it solves its problems. This is a difficult task, to judge if it's right or if it's wrong, for people to use the tools that they have in their disposal to defend themselves. And yes, people are defending themselves. But people are also committing atrocities. These tools that we create to act on our behalf, to act on our command, and sometimes it acts independent of us. These tools, they do change the world, they do change our lives, and they are at times more deadly than we ever imagined them to be. And clearly, if somebody with a bigger gun was a deterrent to people, then we probably wouldn't keep on having disagreements. I know, and I appreciate the fact that we live in the gray. And at times we think that things are right and they're wrong. Is it right for people to use it? Is it wrong for people to use it? Personally, I don't know. I'm still struggling with even the fact that we even have to go to war, let alone have to deal with the tools of war in themselves. So you already know that at times we want things to be clear, right and wrong, black and white. But in all honesty, the life we live is kind of murky. We're living in the gray. And I hope, even though you have the convictions of what is right and people do you wrong, I hope you have grace on them and that you show them grace. And then when you do wrong, and I hope the world will show you grace, because we're all just trying to figure it out. And I hope we figure out a way to be loving to each other, to be kind to each other, to be patient with each other, to be peaceful toward one another, to see anyone, anywhere in this world, to love them like we love ourselves. Peace.